Good evening, fuckers.
Let's do this like we mean business.
I was just, brainstorming new introduction ideas.
Good evening, fuckers.
Mm.
Well, it beats hello, internet. I am the Orbiter and I am Firebolt, or whichever way around we do it.
We've only been doing it nearly 3 fucking years.
Bollocks out!
Oh shit, we're gonna need to do the anniversary recording again soon.
Let's hope it's a little less fractious than last time.
Yes. Let us hope.
Shall we make an effort to... shall we?
What are you talking about?
Shall we start the podcast, please?
You want to? I haven't got any ideas.
Nor have I.
Oh, that's a great start.
Let's just have a chat. That's what this is all about anyway. We'll stick work in there somewhere.
Okay. Oh, I get what you meant when you said you're late for work.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Jesus. Okay. So if I crack a joke now, in about 10 minutes' time.
That was actually fairly clever. Well done.
Don't patronise me.
I can patronise you all I want.
It's literally the wrong way round if you patronise me.
Well, it's comedic, what's it called?
Dissonance.
No, disposition. I don't know. The thing where you swap round the roles.
Foreplay.
No, fuck off.
Like the bread rolls.
No. Like comedic role reversal, but there's something in my mind.
Yoki Koki.
There's a word for it, like ultra imposition or something. I don't know. Superimposition. I don't know. That's not it.
I don't know.
Anyway. Hello, internet. That was a bit harder than I expected.
Yeah,
it to be.
Don't punch me in the face, please.
Sorry.
I'm not well.
I just meant to do a light bitch slap.
Come on.
Well, don't whistle during the fucking intro if you want me to do it. This is going to be a long ride. No, don't say it. Hello, internet. I'm Firebolt.
And I'm the Orbiter.
And
Hi ho!
what the fuck are you on?
Hi ho! Hi ho! It's off to work we go.
Oh.
Ooh.
You just gone temporarily insane.
Temporarily?
Well,
what's the use of that?
More insane than usual.
Do you know, I'm actually supposed to be keeping it elevated above the level of my hip so that it doesn't start throbbing.
Do you want to tell them what the fuck you're talking about?
No, I'll just leave that there for now. What's in the news?
Well, I haven't welcomed people to the episode. Welcome to episode 72, is it?
Yeah, so yesterday morning I had a checkup at dermatology.
Oh, we're going to personal use, okay.
Because I've had this blemish on my lower calf, the inside of my lower calf. I don't know, I can't remember if I've said before, but I have a long-term skin condition, which it's called mycosis fungoides, and sometimes I get skin cancer. So it's quite possible I have it again, because I've had one cut out on my head already a few years ago, didn't I?
Oh, is that like a fungal infection then?
What?
It's Mycos. And
No, despite its name, it's not actually. No, it's actually a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
yeah.
There are 4 main stages, each of which is broken into 2 sections. So, if you get to stage 4, you basically need chemotherapy because that's when you've got what is it? Lymphatic cells? No, lymphoma cells. Stage 4A is lymphoma cells in your blood, and stage 4B is in your blood and in other organs. But I think I'm currently at stage 2B at the moment, which means I've been referred for light treatment, which means I might get a tan for Christmas.
Oh.
Basically get a tanning booth 3 times a week on the NHS. But anyway, this morning, I had a small part of my leg cut out to be sent off for tests. Skin biopsy. And that's what I was referring to when I said I'm supposed to be keeping it elevated above the level of my hip so that it doesn't throb too much. But it's not actually hurting as much as they were telling me it was going to. They said I shouldn't drive for like 8 or 9 days, but so I've signed myself off work and potentially lost free pizzas for a week.
Oh no.
I'll get back in touch because I could drive fine. It doesn't seem to be.
I'm sure we'll survive about pizzas for 1 week.
Will you though?
Yeah.
Really?
My leg's better if anyone cares.
That's work related.
What?
Like not being able to drive, that's work related. Your leg's better, is it?
I mean, sort of. There's still a sort of patch that hurts when you touch it, but
Don't touch it then.
well, yeah, but it's like annoying if it brushes past something. And today, while I was practicing, I accidentally hit it with a drumstick.
Ow!
Yeah. So I had to lie down for like 5 minutes just going. It's like that bit in Family Guy when he just trips over and bangs his knee.
Actually, you mentioned that. In general, Family Guy I prefer to The Simpsons, or have done in the past.
Yeah.
But I'm watching through The Simpsons at the moment, and I've got to say, for me, it's getting funnier now. I didn't find it particularly funny at the
smarter
start.
comedy, I think.
Is it though?
It's witty. It's not just like in your face.
Yeah, I suppose. But I mean, I'm on season 7, and it's taken this long for it to start to get funny to me. I mean, there's bits of it that were funny before, but I'm finding it funnier now. More adult, I think. But anyway, what's that got to do with the podcast? Nothing.
I mean,
nothing.
it was a while ago now, but Biden sort of won the election.
Oh yeah, there was another thing in the news as well. Go on. Yeah. Well, it's funny because basically Trump's demanded that recount, hasn't he? So we get to watch him lose again.
Well, yeah. But like, I mean, they're trying to bring a bunch of legal challenges, but it seems that basically everyone's getting struck down because
he's getting making a dick out of himself.
There's just no real evidence that they can actually provide other than anecdotal evidence at best, which is of things that are relatively not suspicious. Like throwing away envelopes because you would do that at a polling station.
Excuse me, COVID cough. I don't think.
Good.
I'm feeling quite hot though. Is it warm in here?
Not really.
It is though, isn't it?
Not really.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a weird one. Sorry, have you? Ow! Fuck! Actually, that does hurt a little bit. I've got to be careful with how I rest my leg because I mean, I've got 2 stitches in it. So if obviously the skin's quite tight, I'm leaving it until tomorrow before I decide whether or not I'm going to start driving again because it might be just the anaesthetic taking time to wear off. I'm not supposed to be drinking in the first 24 hours.
Well, then you're a dumbass.
Well, we knew that. Yeah, have you got anything else to say about the election?
Oh, there's hopes of election wise.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Don't you think it's funny though that the Leave team's been basically kicked out of number 10 like the week after Joe Biden got into?
I would assume that it's just
I don't
a
mean funny.
coincidence, but
would you really?
I mean, it is going to be more difficult for them. I think they were hoping that Trump would get in, which kind of doesn't say the best things about our government.
Dominic Cummings has actually left Downing Street now, hasn't he?
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised by that, because I kind of thought he was who was actually running the country instead of Johnson.
Well, I think essentially he probably was, but see, they've said that they're going to, well, the senior Tory MPs have said they want to reset the party now, haven't they? It's like, that's fucking all we need at the moment. Obviously, that was all we need, isn't it?
Like, reset it to Thatcher evil, Cameron evil, May evil? What
Essentially,
flavour of evil do you want your party to be?
So essentially, Boris Johnson's fiancée is like Queen Elizabeth I in Blackadder 2 now.
My memory is not great of that.
In other news, there was something quite which had more of an effect on me, I think, than I was expecting to, and I've kind of found out in some detail why Peter Sutcliffe died, didn't he? The Yorkshire Ripper.
Oh, okay.
Do you know about the Yorkshire Ripper?
Not really.
Okay, so in the second half of the 70s, between 1975 and 1980, he was a serial killer who lived in Leeds. And he used to basically smack women over the back of the head with a hammer to kill them. And sometimes he would rape them. There's a lot of stuff come out about it because, I mean, I remember it to a certain extent. I lived in Leeds at the time, and it's weird when I started thinking about, when it came into the news, it sort of brought back some memories of my youth, because I was like, I would have been when I remember being about 6 or 7 and hearing adults kind of talking to other sort of young women, basically warning them not to go out on their own and stuff. And it was really quite scary, because it was the thing was, I mean, now we know who it was, but back then nobody knew who it was. So like there was this kind of atmosphere that women were being told not to be alone, even with a male that they knew, because it could be somebody that nobody knew who it was. So it was really quite. But the thing that freaked me out, because I spoke to my mum about it, to Nan about it, because, as I say, I remember this kind of. Obviously, at that age, it didn't really hit home with me at the time as much, and I kind of was shielded from it a bit. But I do remember young women being warned about not going out and stuff, but I didn't realise till I spoke to Nan that one of the murders actually happened literally just round the corner from where we lived, when we lived there, in Headingley, at the Arndale Centre. And if you imagine, I mean, that was probably a 10-minute walk from where we lived, but it was actually literally just round the corner from my school. So, like, probably about as far away as the Co-op is from us here.
Murder house, like a couple of streets away from here, isn't there?
1 street away. Yeah, somebody got murdered with an axe. That was a domestic thing.
Yeah, it was a few decades ago as well. But
no, it was. I was on my way home from the cinema one night, and the road was closed off. It was less than a decade ago.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh no, it might have been more than a decade ago. It was around a decade ago. I'm trying to remember when I worked at the cinema, but yeah, that was a domestic incident gone wrong. But this was for 5 years. And there's police been sort of interviewed about it that were on the case at the time, and you've got to sort of think, they had nothing to go on. They had no idea who it was. There was no CCTV. So...
How did they catch him?
I don't know, actually. It'd be worth looking that up, because... it was particularly scary because that whole area was... it was young women that were kind of... and the thing was, it was the misogyny at the time that it was like women were being told not to go out on their own, and kind of... I think some of them that he murdered were prostitutes, and...
He confessed.
Oh, right, okay. Well, he says here that he was the voice of God had sent him on a mission to kill prostitutes.
Yeah, I can see why he was called the Yorkshire Ripper.
Yeah. Which is weird, considering that in the Bible, Jesus' best friend was a prostitute.
Yeah, but do you expect the voice of God to be consistent? Plenty of people have different interpretations of what that means.
Yeah.
Plus, he might not have believed in the Bible God.
But, it's not a nice kind of... You see, nowadays, you've got, they didn't have, DNA evidence they could use either. Nowadays, they'd have caught him straight away if they managed to get his DNA on file.
He apparently had paranoid schizophrenia.
Right. Yeah. It's... What do you do with that?
By the way, schizophrenia is commonly misconceived to be like multiple personality disorder, which I think is now generally called dissociative identity disorder, but schizophrenia is more like hallucinations rather than split personality.
Is it a form of psychosis?
At that level, probably, yeah. That would be like one of the symptoms.
Yeah, because I played through Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice on the Xbox, which was made with the help of several people who had been through and treated for psychosis, and sort of schizophrenic aspects of that storyline were they were helped by psychologists and stuff to try and emulate the whole experience, and it's really quite eye-opening, I think.
Often they're like voices telling you nasty stuff about yourself, but I guess in his case it was telling him.
See, the thing about it is, I know I've heard in the past that LSD is like simulated psychosis, and I can imagine, because I've taken LSD in the past, I don't have to really imagine. I can remember that whole kind of experience of seeing things that aren't there, believing things that are kind of not there, and hearing voices and stuff. But when you know what's causing that, when you know that it's a temporary thing that's brought on by, taking a drug, basically.
Yeah.
It's different from if... I can imagine if that happened to you for no... Because one of the ways that works is by breaking down the barriers between connections in the brain that don't normally get broken down. So there are connections being made in your synapses that you wouldn't normally make. So presumably that's why it's a simulated psychosis, because that's the sort of thing that happens in a brain when there's things going wrong and stuff.
And quite often it can be the result of damage to a specific part of the brain.
Yeah. Actually, one of my friends, I say a friend, who was a colleague. I played on a CD with him, but he was a bit of a dick guitarist. His mate, supposed mate, spiked his drink with LSD before his final school assembly.
Yikes.
And
you spike a drink with vodka or something, not fucking LSD.
he said he said the first thing he knew about it was when the assembly was starting, the head teacher walked in to take the assembly, and apparently where he was sat there, he didn't see the head teacher walk in. He saw an elephant in a suit walk in. And like, imagine if you didn't know that you were on something and you actually saw an elephant in a suit walk into the fucking assembly. You'd freak the fuck out. Don't do it. I mean, it's funny. I'm laughing about it now, and he laughs about it now. But it's not. Just don't do it, kids.
If any
bogus.
kids listen to this show,
I'm a kid. He looks really friendly though, doesn't he? I mean, you could imagine. I mean, he's got a shit hairdo, but it was the 70s, so
yeah, I imagine that was taken after they found out.
the thing is, it's weird as well, because there was a member of my family that, distant member of my family that everyone didn't used to talk about much, but I kind of found him to be a really nice guy. But he'd been arrested because he used to go out in Headingley flashing, like with a flasher mac on, like flashing women and stuff. It's like he had something like that he needed treatment for. But he was a really friendly guy, you know.
It's weird, like there's just generations of millions of people that just lost to various mental disorders because nobody understood them.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you know, I know someone and I work with someone now that has the same condition that my dad had, that basically split their marriage up, and you know, it was just that he had a problem with aggression. You know, he was manic depressive. What is it called nowadays? Bipolar.
Yeah.
But nobody knew about that then, you know. And it's like there's a lot of stuff going on now with ADHD sort of what do you call it? Diagnoses, which would in the past have been labelled as just bad behaviour.
Yeah. I saw something funny of
but people just think differently.
Either people with ADHD need to stop being relatable, or I need to get a diagnosis.
Stop being relatable. Oh, right. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Well, no, the thing is, because I watched a TED Talk on this as part of my uni course. And it's talking about how the way the world is now, with all of this information just being fired at you all the time, competing for your attention. It's no wonder it's easy to get distracted and difficult to focus on things, you know. And he told the story of this. It doesn't work having or working. Our whole education system's been built on what worked for the Industrial Revolution, basically.
Yeah,
and it's
surprisingly little has changed since.
But it doesn't work anymore. The world
century.
has changed. We're in the technological revolution now, and we need to educate and think and work differently. But this particular case that he said about was this mother had taken her daughter to a doctor, who eventually been to a psychologist, because she was what would now be diagnosed as ADHD, but she just, you know, she couldn't focus, she couldn't concentrate, she couldn't sit still, and basically the doctor tried something. He said to the girl, if you don't mind, if it's okay with you, me and your mum are just going to leave the room for a chat for a minute. Will you be all right in here on your own? And she was like, yeah. So anyway, on his way out of the room, he turned the radio on, and there was music on the radio. And they got outside the room, and he says to the mother, just watch. And they watched in through the window, and within a minute, this girl was up and dancing, in a completely controlled way, dancing really well. And basically the doctor said, there's nothing wrong with your daughter. She's a dancer. That's basically it. So she was taken to a dance school and eventually became a top choreographer for dance companies on Broadway, I think. But it's just that different people have a different natural way of thinking. It's like, it's almost like she couldn't focus, she couldn't think without dancing. Dancing was her way of thinking, if you like, or expressing her personality. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that doesn't, you can't educate everyone in the same way. It just doesn't work like that. I mean, trying to link this into work.
Yeah.
The reason I suppose that is relevant is that Industrial Revolution way of trying to sort of churn out conformists, not robots as not really kind of production line thing, but if you went through the education system, you could pretty much guarantee that you if you got to a certain level, you would get into a job and you'd be set for life. But that just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are beginning to realize that, and it's like, well, hold on, this doesn't really work like that.
Yeah.
Like, the modern world requires people to be able to innovate, I guess, more than just like doing repetitive tasks like data entry or operating a machine that like an AI in the modern world could probably do.
But collaboration is a big thing now that hasn't been so much in the past. So in the past, it's been like hierarchical structures. You've got your management and your directors and all that, and it's all like, shit flows downhill and all this lot. But now it's all about collaboration and working out solutions to problems, and there's a lot more concentration on the leisure industry and the service industry. I'm experiencing what I think I'm experiencing it again now is the same as what I went through as a teenager, because I didn't fit in a private school where I'd been until I was 15. So I went off the rails and ended up getting expelled and ended up at a state school, where I was much happier, and my grades across the board within a year went up 2 points in every subject. And yet the private school's supposed to be a better quality education. But the point is, like now, you see, I did a similar thing when I went to the Royal Academy of Music. It's a very highbrow global conservatoire, if you like, but there's a lot of pressure, and it's a very classically orientated, intense training program. I don't know if it's the same now. It's probably moved on a bit now, but I ended up not making a success out of that. But now I'm back at uni again, and I'm finding the whole atmosphere a lot more conducive to I'm wanting to learn. Because you're given a lot more space to learn on your own terms. You kind of...
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of that is due to the sort of nature of online learning, where you kind of need to, like, for the lectures exam, I think you've had a bit of a different structure, but for me at least, like, I get to pick when I watch a lecture. I don't go to a specific building at a specific time to watch one.
Yeah, I've had a couple of lectures like that to be watched whenever, but most of them have been live. I mean, they're all recorded, so that if you do happen to not be able to go to one of them for whatever reason, you can catch up on it. But it is weird. I mean, they're talking about hopefully getting us back in after Christmas, and it's like we don't know what's...
Well, that's the other news item that I wanted to mention. The somewhat more promising than the Russian one, at least. Vaccine from a Belgian company, Pfizer, I think it is.
Pfizer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pfizer, BioNTech. I don't know what the BioNTech part is. I know about Pfizer. They make Viagra, among other things. They're a big.
I won't ask.
They're a big pharmaceutical company.
Which I found interesting because it was like, oh, it's a Belgian company. I hope nothing stops trade between Britain and Belgium around about January time.
Yeah, but what was it? Gogh. What's his name? Michael, is it? Was saying, I get all their first names wrong. Not Donald or Dominic, no, or Boris. It's Michael Gove. He was saying about well, maybe it was Dominic Raab. I don't know. They're all cunts anyway. So one of them was saying about they've got a thing in place where they can bypass the problems with importing through the ports by flying stuff in direct from Belgium. But it's like, so that's a clear admission that there are enough problems at the ports to stop stuff getting in that needs to get in then.
Yeah. I still don't get, like, what the point of Brexit is. It's always, like, it's either vague posturing about sovereignty, which is kind of fallen by the wayside because it gives us less control, really. And or it's just, oh, well, people voted for it, therefore we have to do it. We don't have to justify that. We just have to do it.
That was something I saw today. I can't remember who it is. If it's a Scottish an MSP or not. But someone is in the political landscape in Scotland is taking the BBC to court over a report by Laura Kunsberg. And it's basically, I suppose it's like a defining test case. It's the complaint is specifically that in a report, and I've heard this many times, that, you know, there's been a lot of coverage of the polls recently that there's overwhelming, there's more support for independence now than there ever has been.
From the looks of it, that's gone down a bit since that news, but yeah.
But during the BBC reports, Laura Kunsberg was saying that, reported that the problem Nicola Sturgeon has is that whatever the public opinion polls are saying, Westminster has to okay a referendum for it to be legal. Now, something to do with Section 30 of the Act that covers the independence referendum kind of setup, if you like. I can't remember what the name of the Act is, but it's Section 30. Now, it doesn't actually say anywhere in that Act that that's the case.
Yeah.
So basically, this is being put to court to define whether or not that's actually true. Now, regardless of that, Nicola Sturgeon would prefer. She's always said she would prefer to do it with Westminster's approval.
Yeah, it makes it easier.
Legally, it's not stated that that has to happen.
Yeah. Well, I find this interesting because I think it was Mary Black. She's one of the SNP MPs. And
I never know how to pronounce her name. That's the one that's spelled, is it Mhaire?
Yeah, it's just Mary. It's just a Scottish spelling of it, kind of.
Is it? Because I know somebody who's spelled like that their name's pronounced Vary.
Well, I've heard her name pronounced Mary.
Yeah.
Or Mary. But yeah, she sort of brought up independence.
Do you think she's married?
I don't know. I think she's a lesbian.
But that doesn't mean you can't be married.
No, but
can you marry same sex in England yet?
Yeah.
All right.
You could since 2010.
All right. I know Scotland were first with it, but
although there might be different age laws still because that's shit.
San Miguel.
But yeah, they were talking about employment benefits or whatever to do with coronavirus, and obviously the government spokesperson or whatever was expecting questions about that. She brought up independence instead, which they clearly didn't like, and like tried to like ridicule her and whatever. She made a point that the Conservatives will like make out that any SNP MP bringing up independence is ridiculous and obstructing government business, and you're not talking about what Scotland needs, so you must clearly not have the people's interest in heart. But that Conservative MPs have built their entire career in Scotland around opposing independence.
Well, there is a battle plan in place, isn't there? There's a campaign now to kind of win back the heart of the unionists in Scotland. Well,
for at least a while ago, it was looking like SNP could win all but one seat in the next Westminster election.
It's going to be interesting, and I don't know. I wonder whether or not coronavirus, and obviously Brexit, but coronavirus as well, is going to be a catalyst, if you like. I mean, it makes you wonder what would have happened in America had coronavirus not come along with this election.
I mean,
because a lot of people would have voted the way they did because of the way Trump dealt with it.
Oh, you meaning because of that, not how they voted? Like, if
let's
they voted
face
by
it.
mail.
Let's face it. When you look at the results of the last two UK elections, the massive difference, the massive swing to the Tories, was purely because of the Brexit stance.
Yeah, it's kind of the noticeable thing
So
that they
was,
kept pushing.
It's been labelled as the Brexit election. It was basically a second referendum.
Although
they turned it into that.
Most of the votes went to parties that promised a second referendum.
Yeah.
But, we're not a democratic country, are we?
No.
We just pretend to be sometimes.
So, I mean, I'm trying to think. That's been less than a year now, isn't it? Is it? When was it was before Christmas last year, wasn't it? It must have been
12th of December.
12th of December, was it? Was that the one that was like the first one that hasn't been on a Thursday? Or something?
No, it was a Thursday.
It was a Thursday, was it? Interesting.
I don't know why we do our voting things on Thursdays.
I did hear it was something to do with because with the way that the count tends to take a particular amount of time. Usually we find out the results sometime on the Friday, and it gives them the weekend to make adjustments, if you like, in Parliament and stuff for carrying on from there. Because we don't have the thing where in America they even though they've had the election, they've got to wait until January for him to fuck off, haven't they?
Yeah, well, that's because it's a president, not really like the...
Is it as quick as the next Monday when they do all that Black Rod stuff?
I don't know.
Yeah. I know it's pretty quick.
I know the reason for the
royal
Tuesday
pantomime,
election
don't they?
in America's like, obviously, in the past, basically everyone would have gone to church, and the farmers would have needed like a day to travel to the nearest voting place.
Right, okay.
So it's Tuesday, so they have Monday to travel.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. Because I've been up since 6:15 this morning. I had a knife in my leg at 8:15 this morning, or just after 8:15.
Oh.
So the most painful bit was when they put the injection in to numb it. After that, I didn't feel a thing. Anyway.
Was that in Glasgow?
What, today?
Was that Aberdeen?
No, Aberdeen.
I mean, yeah. Was that part of the...
I did arrive home while
part
you
of
were eating
medical
your
operation,
breakfast.
or just like you commute in?
No, I said it was Aberdeen, not Glasgow.
Well, that's why I was asking.
Oh, okay. What day is it? Sunday.
Yeah. Why?
So no, it was just because I was trying to remember. It's not really podcast related, but I've got Optical Express phoning me tomorrow morning to see how my eyes have got on since that fixture was sorted.
Should we get onto the subject a bit more?
Have we not?
Not really.
Well, you haven't thought about it, have you? I mean,
I've been coming up with a few ideas.
what is work? See, okay, I had one idea that I wanted to bring up. Things like artists and sports people doing their jobs. I know firsthand as a musician that even for me, it's difficult to adjust to thinking of and speaking about what I do as work, even though I get paid for it most of the time. And I think there is this kind of implication that work is something that you wouldn't do if you didn't have to, and it's an unpleasant thing that you kind of tolerate.
Well, that's an idea.
Well, there has been in the past. Maybe that's more from the Industrial Revolution side of things, a necessity. Yeah.
With the sort of idea of introducing a universal basic income, which would essentially ensure that for whatever reason, if you couldn't work, that you would have like the basic income that you need to survive.
Yeah.
So, it's sort of, the idea of it is, well, practically to sort of cut down on bureaucracy with like managing various different kinds of benefits. It's meant to be like a replacement for all of that, but also it just means that like people can have the freedom to take risks, do new things, and actually do what they want to do with their lives, be what they want to be.
I mean, that kind of links to specifically what I was saying about sort of artists, performing artists and creative artists, but also sports people, that both of those wide categories, if you like, refer to what they do as playing. I mean, maybe not so much with something like dance or yeah, I suppose. I mean, I'm thinking specifically of music, that you play music. And playing is something that's thought of, if you think of the word on its own, it's something that's more usually attributed to like childhood, doing things for the enjoyment, like, but any childhood educator, any child education expert will tell you that play is actually the most effective form of learning for children.
Yeah, I think that's something that they particularly like stress in the Finnish education system, which is part of what makes it quite a lot better than most other education systems.
But there is this kind of assumption that work and play are separate things. And it is quite tricky, I think, sometimes to, when your work is your play, when you enjoy what you do as a job, is kind of switching off from that and giving yourself time out, relaxing and doing a bit of, I mean, I have to really focus on deliberately doing something other than music, because music's what I've always enjoyed the most. But even that, when you do it all the time, it does become arduous.
I find often that even musicians and other types of artists are, like everyone, sort of conditioned to be at least somewhat almost derogatory to those that don't fit that traditional definition of value. Because a piece of music or
snobbery,
a painting are kind of abstract in value, whereas like if you make a bottle that has like a set price, I mean it might shift, but like you're not putting
Thing is, though,
subjectivity into that.
see, this is something that you sort of think about. One of the things with doing like the meditation stuff that I do is kind of trying to adjust your way of thinking so that one of the principles is about gratitude, and I've always had a bit of an issue with that because I kind of it's been incorrect, but my assumption has been that if you have gratitude for your life, you're getting quasi-religious because you've got to have somebody to have gratitude to for that. But when you start looking into the actual definitions of gratitude and what that means in your everyday life, it's like you look at that bottle that you just mentioned. What do you see? It's just a bottle, but when you look at it, it's useful to you as a bottle, as a vessel to drink out of. But into that has gone no end of work by people with different skills. People who make glass, the people who've actually, along through the ages, have come up with the formula for making that glass and for moulding it into that shape and for colouring it the way it is. The designers that have designed that glass, the people that have filled it with beer, the people who have brewed that beer, the farmers who have grown the hops that have gone into that beer, the people that have designed the cap, the seats we're sitting on, they're all examples of work. And one of the things I think I'm kind of trying to get around to is, even with sports people and really rich and famous people, what they're doing for work is in some sense the same as what somebody who waits on tables or drives taxis or works in a factory does. They're basically serving other people, aren't they? They're being subservient to other people. They're giving their skills to make other people's lives better.
There's something that I was going to bring up a video on, but it's quite long and I can probably summarise the part that I'm wanting to talk about, is Karl Marx. I mean, there's a lot of things in his writings, obviously, but one of the things that it was a Philosophy Tube video. I think it was Karl Marx versus Charles Darwin, although not really Charles Darwin the scientist, more Charles Darwin being applied to politics, which is anyway.
Sorry, I just had a really exciting realisation that I need to drop in before I forget it.
What?
Thinking about work. Sorry, I've got a train of thought, but I'm gonna lose it.
The idea he had, the anecdote that the guy that does philosophy mentioned was one day Karl Marx, while making his breakfast, exclaimed, "Who made this egg?"
Right.
To which his daughter replied, "Well, that's silly, Daddy. People don't lay eggs." But then he was like, "Well, no, I don't know who went into the process of making everything in my dinner here." Karl Marx, I think, did most of his writings around the 1860s, by which point the Industrial Revolution was well underway. So most people didn't know who was manufacturing their food, their furniture, their clothes, that sort of thing. Whereas what he realised was, in the past, under feudalism, you probably would know who did that. Like, you would get your clothes from the tailor, you'd get your bread from the baker, get your eggs and your meat from the farmer.
Yeah, I suppose the production process has elongated in that sense that, I mean, now everything's been broken down into individual tasks so that people can specialise in one thing, basically, haven't they? And then they pass it along the production line to someone else. But this is the realisation that I've had, and it does, when you think about the whole process of work and its value to society, capitalism, that is its inherent flaw, isn't it? That it doesn't capitalism doesn't value work correctly.
It doesn't value humans so much as material.
But that's what I mean. The work aspect of it isn't factored into the valuation of the product. It's like somebody can be paid a ridiculous amount of money for doing a lot less work than somebody who cleans a toilet.
Well, a key part of capitalism is basically exploitation. I mean, just fundamentally, even if you're a really nice boss, you have to exploit some value out of your workers to be able to make a profit. That's just a fundamental feature of capitalism.
Well, that's one of the difficulties with the whole model of corporations, isn't it? Because you have a board of directors who are beholden to the shareholders, who basically own the company. The shareholders have put the money in. They expect to get some profit, some return from that, and it is gambling, basically.
But could you really call that work? I mean, they get a lot more value out of it than the people on the factory floor.
Could you call which part work?
Investment.
The investment part. Well, I mean, even those, they're taking the risk, but they quite often have a portfolio manager who will advise and even administer the investment. You know, there are a lot of people who have the wealth who simply enjoy the wealth and use it to generate more wealth by employing people to invest it on their behalf. And I suppose a capitalist would say that investment, although, by the way, when Sean Connery died, apparently he was in the Bahamas at the age of 90, which is a nice way to go. Anyway, they might be enjoying their time on the beach as the product of their investments, but a capitalist might argue that it's their investments that have made possible hundreds or thousands of jobs doing whatever it is they've invested in producing. And I suppose that is that trickle-down thing that you were talking about in the last episode.
Exploitation of people, essentially.
Yeah. It's not a fair system, is it? I mean, it works, but not very well.
It works for some people.
Yeah, it's a solution to keeping society going, but it's a crap one. It doesn't serve everyone. It doesn't kind of. It's a bit shit. It's probably the least favourable system we could have in place.
It's almost parasitic, really. You know, they give their hosts a reason not to remove them, but drain every ounce of value from them that they can. And the good parasites don't kill their hosts, just keep them alive enough to extract maximum value.
But in the process of doing that, there is, I suppose, a fine balance between losing all your workers because you've exploited them beyond breaking point, if you like.
Well, that's the point of paying for propaganda. Why do you think most of our media is owned by, like, free people?
But I mean, who's making these decisions? Because it's all very well saying that those rich people that have got the money that are living off the profits and sitting back waiting for their investment portfolio managers to reap the rewards on their behalf. Somebody is making the decisions. That's a bit of an abstract statement. There's lots of people making the decisions. I suppose it's a system-wide disease, really, isn't it? The exploitation. It's not just the person with the most money saying, do this, 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 and this to all their minions, if you like. It's a system-led principle of, this is the way that society has developed. This is the point that we've reached through the progress of the Industrial Revolution and the systems, the political systems that have evolved through society. I mean, democracy, is it gonna? I was going to say, is it going to continue the way it is? Is it really democracy, or is it oligarchy?
Kind of a mixture, because you get a minuscule say in a very small aspect of how the country actually works. The politicians only really control,
but in our electoral,
fairly small parts, like
in the UK's electoral system, and certainly in the US's electoral system, there are vast swathes of the population whose votes literally make no difference after the outcome has been decided, because
most of the votes in the last election didn't really get counted because of the first past the post system.
Yeah, the popular vote.
It's not even like majority vote, it's just plurality. So like in the most extreme cases, I think there's like a constituency in Northern Ireland that I think it might have been the DUP got like 25% of the vote, and because it was split so much, they
What do you
actually
think
won.
I mean, I was just thinking, like, you know, it seems to me that a successful leadership in a society that's structured the way that ours is manages to keep everyone just, or the majority of people just satisfied enough with life that they don't want to risk rocking the boat to the point that revolution would. But what do you think there's a role in holding up past failed civilizations as almost a fear-mongering tool, like that Red Scare thing, like Nazi Germany, like the Roman Empire, even the British Empire to a certain state now? Because I mean, like we have what we're told is a democracy going on now, and the worse things get, the more you think, well, you know, when are things going to change? Are people going to actually rise up and overthrow this system to get something fairer in place to stop poverty? When there's always the threat that there's always this history being held up saying, well, look, you know, things could be a lot worse than they are now.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it's sort of telling history through a very specific lens to sort of particularly with like the Soviet Union, that was in the case of like Stalin, a very authoritarian implementation of, I'm not even sure you could reasonably call it communism, but what they called communism, or whatever the Russian term for it is, you know, it's sort of misrepresenting deliberately what like people calling for equality really want. It's like, well, yeah, that wasn't equal in any way, the Soviet Union. Like Bolshevism itself, by definition, has like an elite political class, which isn't really very socialist when you think about it for like more than 5 seconds.
Well, I mean, I was just trying to think. Obviously, in the past, societies, nations have been a lot more insular, in that it would have been a lot easier. And thinking about what we were talking about with the whole Yorkshire Ripper situation, even back as close as the 70s, that people could get away with stuff because they were under a lot less trackability, surveillance, and the technology hadn't developed to catch people doing bad things. But in a similar kind of way, back in those eras pre that time, it was easy to paint other nations as the bad guy because people within a nation were only really exposed to their own environment, and they were exposed to their own media and propaganda. Whereas now that the technological revolution is well underway, we are potentially exposed to every nation's
see, that's the thing with
systems.
The idea of not knowing what goes into your breakfast, and not knowing whose work goes into your breakfast. You might not even know what ingredients go into it. Is that sort of a progression from like the microeconomy of a town or a village, or even like a relatively small city, to the macroeconomy of a whole country, where like factories in the north, that people like Karl Marx, I think Karl Marx was relatively well off compared to most people at the time. He wouldn't have really interacted with those people, so it's sort of like sizing up to a national economy, and now with the technological revolution, global economy.
Do you think that us having informational access to these different systems that different states have, whether they be left, right, authoritarian, libertarian, do you think the fact that we know a lot more about them as individuals now because of the internet means that over time society is likely to become more divided? Or do you think over a long period of time that nations will gradually coalesce into a roughly the same political kind of stance? Or do you think we'll end up with extremes of two viewpoints, if you like a binary
I don't know,
global system?
It'll depend very much on the sort of reasons why certain political views tend to rise up, like in cases of war or facing climate change, people might
This is something that's come out in the news today, which is there are calls now for anti-vax propaganda to be clamped down on.
Yeah.
Now, I find that an interesting subject to consider because, I'm all for freedom of speech and freedom of opinion and stuff like that. But when you get to the point where people's lives are actually at risk through disinformation,
yeah, it's sort of at the point. It's like, you can believe what you want to believe, but if you're going to tell everyone else that, you're putting people at danger.
Yeah.
And if you're presenting alternative facts on vaccinations because of your belief, like...
But then the people who believe in that and are promoting that standpoint, even though you might have, as a scientific observer, you might be able to prove that they're wrong, they don't understand that scientific method. They can't grasp it. So to them, it seems like they're being censored by the state if they are silenced.
That sort of holds credence, I guess, where the science isn't decided, but most of the times where like any bit of science is public knowledge, like scientists kind of know what they're talking about for the most part. There's like details there, but like when people say, oh, the science isn't out on climate change, it's like, well, the fact that we call it climate change means like we've described it fairly well at this point.
But there is a whole powerful movement of disinformation, and in the case of climate change, quite probably funded by the richest corporations on the planet.
Yeah. The same sort of companies that probably would have spread disinformation about tobacco back in the 70s.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I suppose. Well, they're not the same kind of companies, but they have the same kind of morals.
Mm.
They're basically...
It's the same phenomenon, kind of.
But it's really...
It's a way too cheery tune for
the death of a species.
Well, the mass carcinization of a generation. Did you know carcinization actually means becoming crab-like, not just getting cancer?
Oh. No, I didn't, but now I do.
I looked that up because evolution has evolved crabs like 12 different times, and that process is known as carcinization. I was like, I've heard of carcin before. What's a carcinogen? Oh, that causes cancer. And then I made the astrology link between the crab and cancer.
Don't you think? I don't know. You haven't been to British seasides much, have you?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, you've been to Blackpool when it was. I mean, Blackpool's a fucking. I don't know, it's like a time warp, isn't it? But I mean, the traditional kind of British seaside resorts, you haven't been much.
I've been to Scottish beaches, which are kind of.
But you haven't been to
cruel.
like places like the Yorkshire places would be like Scarborough and Bridlington, or I mean, Skegness probably has its own kind of town centre that we never really went to. But
probably at some point, but I don't remember them.
What I'm trying to get around to is that they have these shops, usually somewhere near the harbour, that sell fresh seafood. Like fresh as it can possibly be. It's literally just come off the boat. And I mean, I think it was whelks we used to eat, which is quite interesting experience. They're really nice, actually, really salty. But anyway,
I'm not surprised they just came out of the sea.
Yeah, but crabs, there'd be like trays of these crabs that you could buy, and my brother used to buy them, and you would.
They were alive.
Pretty much, yeah. Their legs are still moving in the tray outside the shop. They're kind of dying. They're kind of, but you basically, because they've got exoskeletons, haven't they? You basically like hit them with a hammer to break their shell, and then like kind of scoop out the crab meat from the inside, and that's what.
Very difficult to break down. I believe it's made out of chitin. Similar thing in like insects.
Yeah. I wonder if like crabs, in that sense, are how they are related in an evolutionary sense to the kind of crabs that you really don't want to get.
Not really. It's just they probably bear some resemblance.
Maybe.
I mean, they're related in some way, obviously, but yeah.
Is that what myco means then? Is that to do with mushrooms? Fungal kind of?
Yeah, mycos is the Greek for mushroom.
What's that thing in Star Trek Discovery? They've got what's that network of there's some kind of network of spores that they travel through. Yeah, have you watched that?
Not recently.
No, can't remember what it's called. Is something kind of, yeah. Anyway, we've got our podcasts have been getting longer and longer. You know, the last one was 2 hours and 16 minutes.
Well, that's because you don't edit them.
It's not. It's because we talk bullshit for a long time.
Well, last time was quite a big subject. Humanity's quite... Sport drive. Here we go.
So... what... There used to be something, I don't know if this still exists, but there used to be something called the working class. Now, class systems are probably quite different now from how they used to be. And I suppose the working class is probably a product of that that same industrial revolution, isn't it?
Mycelium spores, I think you're probably thinking of, which are the sort of networks of
Yeah.
hyphae that fungi form.
Traveling at beyond light speed from one place to another in the universe through mushrooms.
Oh, that's bloody bullshit.
Yeah, but there was a time when they said you could never travel faster than the speed of sound. So
Is there?
there was, yeah. They used to think that you could never travel faster than.
Yeah, anyone that's actually scientifically knowledgeable, though.
They used to think that you couldn't travel faster than 30 miles an hour when cars first came out.
Well, they observed fucking cheetahs doing so.
Yeah, but humans. What about humans?
Yeah, but no one actually, like, physicists, I'm talking about, not just random fucking idiots.
Okay. So, right, okay, so the serious question, physics related, and I don't know if this is something that anyone knows the answer to, but I'm going to ask you because you might.
Okay.
Quantum entanglement.
Complicated.
Yeah. That's what I mean, because it's cause and effect. How do they measure the fact that this is an instantaneous act that's happening? Actually, we should maybe explain what quantum entanglement is first, for those who may not know.
Basically, when two particles that really shouldn't have any particular effect on one another, like they don't really interact for any known forces, but if you change one of them, the other will change, even if they're completely isolated from one another.
And
as far
is
as
it
I know,
over any distance as well?
Yeah, basically. As far as I know, we don't know why specifically.
So as an extremely simple kind of concept to grasp, basically, if you had a light bulb here that represents one particular particle, and a light bulb 2 million light years away.
It's a bit far, but okay.
Yeah, okay. So under normal circumstances, if they're quantum entangled, the cause and effect process, if you switched one of the lights on, it would take 2 million years for the light to travel to the other one. But if they're quantumly entangled, if you switch one of the lights on, the other one switches on instantaneously at the same time.
Yeah, well, sort of like a bit smaller scale. Imagine you had a light bulb here and one in Russia. And so one of them's on, one of them's off. When you switch the one here off, the other one turns on, and they're not connected in any way.
But the other point of quantum entanglement is that normally, like for instance, if you're holding a Zoom conversation, there's a time delay, isn't there?
Yeah.
But the theory of quantum entanglement is, and this has been proved to happen, hasn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah, there has been some demonstrations of this happening where there is no time delay. There's not like a sort of, the light speed barrier it's not like,
yeah,
if it takes light a second to travel that far, it doesn't take the effect a second to travel
vaguely
that far. So what is
where they basically kind of almost invented a sort of pre-time travel where like someone would get the signal before it'd been sent,
but
because the
I suppose
quantum
what the
relationship is travel faster than the light.
I suppose what the science needs to kind of figure out is what is whatever it is that's connecting those two things. What is it contained within? What is it traveling through? You know, where is that connection? Because that is something outside of the space-time continuum.
Well, it's
constraints,
sort of like
isn't it?
through bending it, I think, from what I remember.
So it's literally kind of warp technology then. Not technology, it's like it's a warping of space.
It's very complicated.
Yeah.
These are sort of like the simplified analogies.
Yeah, but in essence, to a non-scientist, that's as close as you can get without looking into formulas and stuff.
But like, I mean, the common thing that I saw coming up when I was looking into this would have been like the spin changing, which is a property of particles.
Yeah, that's weird, isn't it? The rotational symmetry of less than one is...
Yeah,
you have to turn something over
confusing.
twice for it to be the same way up as it was when you started.
Yeah.
That's not really work related, though, is it? Unless you're a physicist.
Well, yeah, energy is work.
True.
Is it? No, I can't.
So yeah, that
remember.
idea that I was saying about work. I mean, like, as a musician, or I suppose as a footballer that earns millions a year. When you're playing football, I mean, obviously the training part of it is going to feel like more like work. Like just as a musician, the practice part and the writing the songs part feels more like work. But when you're on stage playing, or when you're on the football field playing a game, are you, well, even when you're doing the practice part of it and the creative part of it, are you working for the people? Like, I mean, even as an athlete that's trying to break world records, in a sense, you are pushing the boundaries of human achievement. There is a certain amount of entertainment included in that, but
not really.
It's not purely for your own advancement, is it? Like your own.
In a sort of
You're not
boiling
just doing
it down
for
to
yourself.
it. I mean, it's not going to be the case with like something like the Olympics, but in like professional football or race car driving, something like that, you're kind of getting paid to advertise, really.
Yeah.
Your spectacle attracts many eyes, so they slap an advert near you, then those that pay for the advertisements will get a bunch of customers off of that.
Yeah. So that is work. Even if you're serving other corporations, if you like, you're still subservient to other entities, whether they're individual human beings or corporations, or in some cases governments. You're doing something for someone else.
Yeah.
So, is there a form of work? Can it be called work if you're doing something purely for yourself? Is that the only way to achieve actually doing something that's not?
Well, I guess because the values of your work kind of one of these Tinkerbell concepts where it only really exists if enough people believe in it. Like, the Mona Lisa is worthless unless millions of people think it's a great work of art.
Yeah, because like, what about a composer who had no recognition in their lifetime?
Well, Van Gogh is a good example of this. He was penniless.
Yeah. And there's been
works
countless artists of all kinds
thought of as masterpieces nowadays.
Yeah. So, but during their lifetime, would what they were doing have been thought of as work? Would anyone have acknowledged that he was working on his art?
I don't know. I mean, they lived in a very different system, those artists at least.
So, I'm not in any way saying I'm a Van Gogh or anything like that, but say, for instance, if I wanted to give up every form of earning money in the capitalist sense of the word in favour of composing and writing music, even though I made no money from it whatsoever, could I claim that I was working, given that at some point after I die, that work could be highly valued by society?
I guess. I mean, it's sort of like it has to have the potential of, I guess, having a theoretical buyer. So there needs to be at least one other person that can verify the value you're ascribing to it, or put their own value to your work.
Even though that person may not exist till years after you've died.
Yeah. So it's sort of like what you might define as just a side
it's
project.
It's a bit of a paradox, really, isn't it? Because
might be seen as a lot more valuable as like a piece of work.
I mean, somebody who's into engineering could use the word work to denote like an engine working hard to pull a train up a hill or something. So basically, in that purest definition of the word, is work really a synonym for effort, or is it something that is dependent on effort being put in? You could say that work is anything for which effort is required.
It's less about effort and more about value. I mean, people might value the sort of effort, but in the end, they're valuing the product. Like, I can put hours of work into some random side project like West Korea or something, but like, it's kind of only really valuable to me. So,
well,
you wouldn't really call that work.
But then there's an interesting other definition of the word in that, especially in the art world, things are referred to as works. Things can be referred to as works.
Yeah.
A work of art.
I think sort of what I was getting at earlier as well with the sort of traditional definition of what work means is that sort of manual labour rather than I guess sort of creativity almost. Yeah.
Well, what is it they...
I mean, they call it skilled labour, but like all jobs require some level of skill. So it's kind of a misnomer to make it seem like jobs like working the cashier in McDonald's is actually easy when it's...
Yeah, I think there's
more valuable really than you'd expect.
There's I mean, that particular work of art, which some people might think isn't work, the John Cage 4 minutes 33, which is all silence, and a lot of modern art stuff that people, criticize, where you've got like an art gallery where there's just like a urinal stuck to the wall and that's a work of art sort of thing. And it's, I suppose the work in that sense, most of that is something which is cerebral. It's the thought processes. And I'm finding with some of the work that I'm doing on my uni assignments, yes, there is a certain amount of the actual presentation of the idea, but there's a fair amount of work I'm doing while I'm washing up, because I'm doing a lot of thinking about what I'm actually going to do, and that part really is the most creative part of the work process. Do you reckon
part of what I guess makes that valuable, if you do see that as valuable, because that's kind of subjective, is the risk similar to that an investor would take, but rather than risking tangible capital like money, I mean, maybe they are putting money into it, but risking social capital if they humiliate themselves and fail.
See, I like this idea of social capital, because there is a kind of, I mean, the idea of that for a musician, for me, I've been through different stages of my career musically, in which at times the most important part would have been like the wedding gigs, because I get the most money out of those. You say
you like the idea of social capital. Do you mean you like the sort of, you agree that it's a sort of accurate theory, or you like having social capital? You like the idea of social capital existing?
I like the idea that value is assigned to value can be assigned to your activities based on what you're providing to the group, if you like. Like, for instance, for me, I'm in a position now where, well, apart from the COVID situation, I actually value and enjoy the gigs I do with Crossfire a lot more than the ones that I do with The Limit, even though, I mean, I enjoy them both, but I get paid a lot less for the ones with Crossfire. But the reason is that I'm doing it for the enjoyment of the people that are listening and the performance aspect of it. And it's almost like, you know, with educating, with teaching, getting into that, the important part is, I mean, it's a nice byproduct that getting paid a secure, decent wage for it is great. But the reason that you're doing it is for what you can offer to other people, how you can improve someone else's life.
You think you should be rewarded more in a material sense for those?
Only in a capitalist system.
Well, do you think that that would be a fair way of doing that, to base what you're paid based on what you're giving out to the group?
Yes, in a way, but that assumes that money is fairly assigned to the value of what it's being used for. Like, if you could quantify precisely how much enjoyment and benefit you're bringing to someone's life by playing something for them.
I suppose that's really the kicker. It's who gets to decide how valuable something is, because some people have a lot more decision, like those that control the stock markets, in what's valuable than you do.
And then it gets really fucking complicated, because
then they get to decide that based on what benefits them, really.
But this is why, and again, this is why it comes down to basically what it is gambling. Because not only then are you talking about people trying to navigate not only assigning value, but also benefiting from that assigning of value through the work that they're doing. But now, but for a long time as well, they've done this thing called futures trading, where they're trying to predict what value certain businesses and companies will have in the future, and then moving money around based on increasing their own wealth as a result of that. And it's kind of annoying as fuck, because you think, well, you know, COVID and Brexit, somebody could be and is making shit tons of money out of that. I mean, did you see the leap the stock market took when they first announced that vaccine?
Yeah, it's
loads
disturbing.
Of people made a lot. I mean, they've lost a lot of money already, but you know what I mean? The people who know what's going to happen.
Economy of the world is basically decided by this line that represents the anxieties of a few rich assholes.
Mm.
And it's very much strikes me that, you know, it stops when they go home.
I don't understand fully how it works, this whole futures trading thing. But there is, I know that you can make money whether or not the value of shares go up or down, as long as you're on the right side of the trade.
Right. Well, I guess it's sort of about trying to diversify your portfolio.
There's something to do with buying shares, and as part of the contract of buying them, you are agreeing to sell them at a particular price at a future point. So say you buy a load of shares today on the condition that you will sell them for a certain amount in 2 weeks' time, and your profit derives from the difference between what the actual value of those shares is at that point in 2 weeks' time and the amount that you've agreed to sell it for.
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck? And people's lives are bought and sold on that premise. It's basically somebody. It's like somebody going into a betting shop and putting people's lives on the desk and saying, I'd like to bet this many livelihoods.
Well, it's like if you invest in a certain company, that could mean thousands of jobs on the line if you pull out of that at the wrong time, or
which is why there's a lot of
invest in the wrong companies that are going to do the planet harm.
There's a lot of criticism at the moment of the Disney Corporation because of I don't know what the total's at now, but they've laid off more than 30,000 of their workers in America, and yet the big bosses are still taking their full salaries, which they're getting like millions a week, and it's like, there are people in the top levels there who could just take a $1 million pay cut and keep loads of employees in employment, or at least being paid, and it wouldn't make very much difference to them.
Yeah.
But these people are...
This sort of thing of like...
And they don't even have health insurance. I was thinking about that the other day when I was
at
at the hospital.
Of money is gonna have different values to people that need it.
I mean, I should be getting regular checkups at dermatology, and the NHS isn't what it should be.
No.
What it has been in the past in Britain. But at least we've got one. And I was thinking, what situation would I be in America if I've got this thing on my leg that I'm worried about, and it's possibly going to get bigger, and it's, what if it's skin cancer, and I don't have the money?
Your insurance premiums would skyrocket.
But what if I don't have the money to pay for that insurance? What if I don't have the money to pay to have it checked up? It's like...
We would be fucked in that situation.
Yeah.
Collectively.
Well, yeah, because it wouldn't just be me. I mean, I'd die eventually, very painfully, because I wouldn't be able to afford the treatment to kind of alleviate that pain. You would either be trying to, as a family, alleviate that pain, hopefully because you care about me, and in the process, not only lose the person that brings in a lot of the money, but also throw a lot of the money that you have at making my end of life more bearable. But
also, like,
ultimately,
the sort of painkillers mum's on probably are exorbitantly priced at like thousands of dollars in the US.
Yeah.
And her life would probably be unbearable without those to help her through times.
Yeah, I mean, that is one thing actually that's we should maybe bring up in personal news that's happened in the last couple of weeks, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, sure.
We are less stressed than we have been in the past because...
Well, in one area, but...
Some longer-term listeners may have known that we have been in battles with the Department for Work and Pensions for years.
Still fucking dickheads, but...
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. For years, and the latest episode of that, basically we've been to 2 tribunals and numerous appeals and stuff. Latest episode of that was that they, even though a tribunal had awarded some disability to Star stuff,
the lower mobility rate, which is basically the minimum that they can pay you if you have a disability.
On being told that the condition had got worse, they took away the original award, even though the tribunal had given. But finally, after a lot of fighting, we got through on the last mandatory reconsideration notice the enhanced rate for both daily living and mobility, which means that basically they've gone from a position of only last month, really, being of the opinion that there was no level of disability there that justified giving any support, to saying that they agree that the maximum amount of support is needed. So it's not like they made a slight mistake, that they slightly scored things wrong. They had a change in
management.
Well,
or like major policy change at some point.
What I wonder a little bit is, I mean, obviously, this last mandatory weekend, the more you go through the appeals process and the reconsideration process, the more you learn the system, and the more you learn.
Yeah. Speaking of It'd probably be worth looking at appealing my decision at some point.
Yeah, would be. But the more you learn the justifications that they're giving for the unreasonable decisions that they're pushing through, because they're under pressure to save as much money as possible. And if they can find a loophole to do that, they will. So you kind of narrow in on the, I mean, it's still being honest about the situation, but you have to make sure that you're giving them no wiggle room. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know you've been in a lot of those interviews, but I'd imagine it's quite a different experience being the one asked questions and being the one that is being told basically that you're, kind of indirectly told that you're lying, just basically like, oh, well, yeah, no, that's...
But you've
that
got to
doesn't
keep,
matter.
as an individual in that position, you've got to keep reminding yourself that, no, that's not what they're saying. What they're saying is that our system, our society does not value your life enough to look after you with the condition that you've got at the moment. That's what you've got to see it as.
Which is kind of weird, because I find that, like, when I'm managing my various mental and physical conditions better, even though I'm struggling, like, they take that as evidence as because I'm able to do stuff that I'm not disabled.
I wondered what I was going to say was, it's a similar thing in that having been back into dermatology after, I think it's been at least 3 years since the last time I was seen, I'd had this urgent referral from the GP when they saw the photo of the lump on my leg. And within 2 weeks I was seen, and then they wanted to actually do the biopsy yesterday when I went in for the checkup, but because I'd driven in and they said that I shouldn't drive afterwards, they said, well, can you come back tomorrow? So I was back in 8:15 this morning on a Sunday. And that was the only time they had free today, because basically they're working all weekend trying to deal with the backlog of cases. And I think it's a similar kind of thing in that if you think about it, the government's political situation at the moment is that anything that happens on the negative side, and I'm talking about people dying of cancer or conditions that should have been picked up on during the last 6 months, but also people who should be on benefits that aren't, that might end up committing suicide.
It's sort of that
potentially
idea of, like,
really bad publicity for them.
Flattening the curve. Like, a lot of the deaths from COVID aren't going to be from COVID itself. It's going to be from...
And even if there are situations, that would have happened anyway, that they're still going to be, there'll be, the vast majority of them won't, but there's still going to be at risk of saying, well, this is because of the way that you fucked up dealing with COVID, So they've got a big, and we're going to end up paying for it, obviously, because they've got to throw money at this to make these things happen. But it's like, well, that money should have been assigned anyway, 350 million a week, was it?
Yeah, well, they keep cutting corners, basically. They've been cutting corners for, like, the last decade, at least, if you don't consider Blair cutting any corners.
Which he did.
Well, yeah. But trying to cut down on various benefits that keep people in this country going.
Well, that was another thing
places.
that's happened in the last fortnight as well, which kind of got buried in the US election stuff, was...
What a surprise.
The government U-turn on free school meals over the holidays.
So what are they doing now?
They U-turned on it. They've given in. Marcus Rashford was campaigning again, the same campaign that he got the knighthood for before, and the Tories were saying,
the
no,
government
we're
gave
not.
him a knighthood and then did the opposite.
The next time, yeah. Well... They fought it for a long time, and now they've finally given into it because
it's no longer valuable to them because the public opinion's too much. They're losing too much in the.
But then,
poll.
of course, you get every interview that anyone from the government's like, so, well, it's not helpful to use this language of U-turns and stuff. It's like, well, stop fucking doing it then, because it every single time.
I found that funny in an interview about the election, because they were taking some time to I think it was because they'd basically refused to comment on whether in a democracy they should count every vote. Dominic Raab saying, "Oh, well, your next question is going to be, why have you congratulated Biden if we think every vote should be counted?" And I was like, well, no, I kind of just assumed you would say yes to that because that's a fairly basic question that every vote should be counted in a democracy.
Yeah. It is. It is a joke, isn't it? But it's entertaining to watch. I mean, these people
when
are
you're
at their
removed,
work, aren't they?
When you're removed from it, it is. But when you've got a stake in it, like, it's quite nerve-wracking.
Yeah. Can you imagine your workplace is the Houses of Parliament? Or Buckingham Palace?
Yeah, that wouldn't be too bad.
Now, see, this morning, when I was on my way into hospital, I thought, I'm having a bit cut out on my leg today, so I'm going to treat myself. And I'm running with that. I got myself a Gogh salted caramel cheesecake last night. I got myself some nice yogurts in the shopping, and I had myself an eggnog latte and a warm cinnamon roll this morning. One of the things that I'm treating myself with, because I like to milk it for all it's worth, was this morning, because I had to get up so early, I didn't have breakfast before I left the house, so I had a breakfast roll meal from McDonald's on the way in. But planning to do that, I went onto Google to search for McDonald's at Bucksburn to see whether or not they'd be open on the way in, because it was quite early, yeah. Now, Google's autocomplete came up with McDonald's Buckingham Palace. Now, I thought to myself, well, there's two explanations for that. Either there is a branch of McDonald's in Buckingham Palace, and I know they've opened up for tourists, kind of, for public tours and stuff, but I'm not sure they would have gone that far. Or there's a load of Americans over here searching for McDonald's at Buckingham Palace.
It might be like a building that's part of Buckingham Palace that's like McDonald's building or something. Like, rather than the company McDonald's, like the surname McDonald's.
All right, okay. I'd be surprised, because it's a very Scottish name. And they're German, aren't they?
What?
The royal family, they're German. McDonald's are Scottish.
The buildings might not be.
Yeah.
It could be the architect.
Buildings don't speak. How could they not be German?
What?
I don't know. I've got to that point towards the second of my end of second thing beer glass. Oh dear. I've been up since 6:15. How dare you suggest that I'm a little bit inebriated?
I did no such thing.
Work. We're working now.
Kind of. Does this have value?
Well, that's the point, isn't it? Don't ask me. Well, actually, funnily enough, hi Craig. We should say hello because he's been kind and sent us a bottle of something which we're going to save for our Christmas episode, aren't we?
It's hot cum.
He comes honey flavoured mead.
Yeah, he's a magic wizard.
I had a massive shout out on him and I can't remember the other guy. I'm shit at other people's names. I'm sorry, everyone whose names I go like completely bypass.
Nick?
I think it might Simon. I think it might be Stuart. Don't know. He does a podcast with somebody. It's Christmas.
Okay.
I think it might be Stuart. Yeah. I think I'm remembering rightly. I'm gonna get pulled up on it in the next episode. Anyway, I had a massive. They're basically slagging me off because I promised them some Christmas tunes on the piano, and I haven't given them any. So
you tease.
I know. I'm a.
Ooh, that's a fun topic.
What?
Sex work.
Is it though? I mean,
well,
what depends.
Sex work as a concept.
Right. Are you?
I mean, it is work. I'm not calling that into question,
Joe,
but like,
Mum and Nan were. I don't know how serious they were, but they suggested I should hire myself out as a male gigolo.
Yeah, no, I don't think you'd make much money on that.
How dare you? How very dare you?
Are you insulted that I said that you wouldn't make a good prostitute?
Yeah. Why would I not be insulted? You saying that my sexual prowess is not sufficient to garner any fiduciary
I'm not going to talk
thingy.
about that.
Well, okay. Well, what do you want to talk about to do with sex work then?
Well, the sort of legality of it.
There's
really.
an assumption, and I'm not comfortable with this.
Well,
there's
the morality of it, because
there's an assumption that people who are in the sex work industry don't have a choice, and that they're being exploited, or basically they're forced into it, and they're not doing it through. It's not what they would choose if they had a choice. Now, I'm not convinced that there isn't an industry of sex workers who have. I know there will be people who have been abused or have no other choice than to prostitute themselves.
It'll kind of be a mix,
but
like with any job. It's like, well,
there's got to be some people who actually choose to do it because they like doing it or because they want to do it, and
take working at a undisclosed takeout delivery service. We'll call them schmonimers.
Will we though?
Sure. Would you enjoy? Would you choose to work there if you had a choice otherwise? Like, you might enjoy it once you've gotten into it, but like, do you think most people there choose and enjoy that, or is it just they do it because they kind of just need to get on with shit?
Well, I suppose you're getting down to, if money wasn't an object, what would you do? I mean, I suppose you kind of, in the process of dealing with everyday life in modern society, you mentally adjust to the things that you do. And there would be many choices and options for someone in my position, one of which is delivering pizzas at Domino's. Now, I'm sure, and I know from experience, that I've done a lot of jobs that are a lot less enjoyable than that. I can easily get myself into a position where I'm happy to...
Other pizza companies are available.
Oh, shit, did I say the name?
Yeah.
Oh, quick, rewind, edit in your minds. Oh, shit, I could get sacked for that.
No one listens.
They're very... Well, hopefully it would be that this would be a reflection on my attitude towards them, that actually it's a really good job. You know, they're nice people. The pay's okay for what I do. You know, you as a driver, especially with COVID going on, there's a lot of downtime that you're still getting paid minimum wage for anyway. You get some extras. Basically, I'm just driving around listening to podcasts and music, and I've been a lorry driver. I've been a bin man. I've been a plastic bottle factory worker. I've made lampshades. I've swept floors in a warehouse. I've cut up Formica worktops for kitchens. I've delivered pizzas, been a taxi driver. It's, for the money, it's not bad. It's fine.
Have you cleaned windows?
No.
Oh.
Well, yes, as part of my job. As a projectionist, I had to clean the portholes in the cinema.
Is that technically like a proper window?
Yes.
It's not an outdoor window, though, is it?
Does a window have to be outdoors for it to be a window?
Fucking no.
I mean, I've cleaned signage. I've cleaned shop signage on a ladder.
Okay.
At a certain establishment that I've failed not to mention.
The old coop.
No.
Oh. Somewhere else. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I worked in the shops as well. Yeah. Actually, I've worked in supermarkets. I've been on the checkouts and stuff.
Okay. We don't need your
I've worked behind a
freebie.
bar.
But back to sex work, because I don't want you to get
I've
down
not
the
done
list
that.
and reach that. Well, on the legality of it, I guess it's a lot broader than just like prostitution, which I believe is legal in most places.
Now, hang on. I'm trying to think what is legal and what's not.
Well, like
Yeah.
escort work, I think is legal.
Yeah,
here,
it is.
as long as you're not like paying for sex.
The thing is, I think technically, in a legal sense, you're paying for somebody's company.
Yeah.
If they choose to indulge in sexual activity with you, it's not for money, it's through personal choice.
Well, there's like
and it's very difficult legally to prove that there's
sort of fantasy providers type things under that umbrella. But also like porn stars would be technically sex workers. It's just that they are being paid to have sex quite often. It's just not being paid by the other actor.
Yeah. So what happens if, say, for instance, you're what I suppose you might think of as an amateur porn producer, in that a lot of people upload their own sex videos to something like I won't mention brand names, but to like a streaming porn site, and they might benefit from adverts that are placed on those streams.
Yeah, I'm not entirely.
Are you then
sure
a sex
how that
worker?
I guess so.
In the technical sense of the word, I mean, really, you should be declaring. But
It's like with YouTube, like people only really take that as their job once they start making enough money to do so.
yeah. But this is, I mean, I suppose in today's society, there's such a grey area between what actually counts as sex work and what doesn't. And it's like, I mean, it is often referred to as the oldest profession in the world, isn't it? Prostitution, yeah. It's something that's been around since...
I imagine farmers have been around longer.
Well, you might imagine that, but before farming came along, I'm sure there were females in tribes or males in tribes that...
No, they got paid for it, because currency wasn't really existing.
Yeah, maybe not in currency terms, but there's always... I mean, even but when you think about it, if you go back as recently as maybe 100 or 200 years ago, marriage itself was like a financial family arrangement, if you like. People married to kind of move family wealth around, so that wasn't just selling sex; that was selling people's whole lives. You know?
Don't they now?
Yeah, I suppose to a certain extent, yeah. So I don't see how you can. No, in short, what you're asking is, do I think sex work is wrong?
Not necessarily. Well, it's sort of like, see, this is the case with a lot of things that like, you could cast judgment on either morality or I guess the sort of wiseness of certain activities.
That's called wisdom, by the way.
Fine. Yeah, fuck off. Of certain things like taking drugs or doing sex work. I mean, I don't think this would be that controversial between us, but like some people would say abortions. Stuff like that like some people see as immoral. Generally, like people will just do anyway, even if it is illegal. But it's much better if it is legal so that it can be done safely.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. I mean, you're talking about outlawing, you're talking about punishing natural human activity.
Well, paying for it.
But it's only our capitalist system that makes that an option.
Well, I guess it's sort of an indictment of the capitalist system that people see that as wrongful exploitation, but don't see any other form of work as wrongful exploitation.
Agreed.
Wow.
An indictment, indeed. Well, any it depends what you mean by exploitation. I mean, I suppose as long as there's a reasonable amount of choice on the part of the person who is being, in inverted commas, exploited or employed. I suppose employment is the thing, isn't it?
Well, there will be a lot of exploitation in the sex work industry. It's just that the sex work itself's not particularly wrong. It's the kind of capitalistic system under which it happens.
Yeah,
which
I suppose
present in any industry.
Exploit implies that the exploited has no choice, whereas employed implies that the employee chooses to do the work for the reward that they're getting. But again, there's a massive grey area because you've got to prove that somebody has no choice.
Both are kind of alternative word meaning use, really.
Yeah. I suppose exploit is more. It has more selfish connotations, doesn't it? It's like employ tends to imply a more balanced arrangement in that the employed gets a fair return for their employment, like both sides benefit equally, if you like. Whereas exploitation, there's a definite bias towards the exploiter in terms of what they get out of it.
Agreement in which both parties benefit equally under this system? At least involving money.
Yeah, I think so. But I think there's a massive imbalance as well. I mean, in terms of my life content, if you like, I'm fairly content with the employment that I take on. I mean, I wouldn't say I have no choice. You kind of have to make choices based on your circumstances, and I suppose that's where the whole kind of poverty issues come into play. I mean, we've been really lucky with COVID, but I've seen so many things on the news of people being interviewed that you just think, I can't imagine being in their situation, because, I mean, in some ways, you can be really nasty and sort of think, well, you know, they've made a rod for their own back in that they've really relied on the capitalist system, in that they've...
Well, but the government's done a worse job than most ordinary people of this.
There's no reason why they shouldn't have done that, because it's like...
They were promised that this was the best system.
There was a woman from a hotel in London, the Royal Lancaster Hotel, being interviewed, which is... Basically, it was a 4-star hotel, and they've recently spent millions on renovations, and they're now like a 5-star top quality luxury hotel. They've got 411 rooms, and they have 20 guests in the hotel. And you think, you know, I mean, like we have very little outlay apart from living costs. We don't really have any. We don't have like a massive premises that we have to pay rent on, whether or not we're making money from it or not.
Well, I suppose in that way, it's sort of like you could say that, oh, well, they could sell whatever part of the business they've got, but then after that...
Who's going to buy it? It's not worth anything at the moment.
Well...
Especially if you've already...
Yeah, that's another point. It's all like, oh, well, you can sell your house. Like,
the thing is, the whole financial system is based on lending and borrowing as well. It's like, well...
Yeah.
You know, if you're in debt, it's like...
I swear, like, the fucking financial crisis was just basically... It's sort of born out of just confusion over how the very economic system we live under actually works.
Well, the Bank of England's just pumped a whole shitload more money into the economy, haven't they? They're basically just...
I don't get how that works. Like, you can just invent new money when it suits you, but not when people are starving.
Well, I suppose the thing is they've got to work within the economic structure that society has developed for itself. Because, I mean, you can't just suddenly... Well, you can. If you suddenly pump loads of money into an economy, like twice what you've already got in, then inflation's going to go up because there's so much more money available. So you've got to do it.
So why can
in a controlled way? They kind of have to at the moment because the economy has pretty much is dead on its feet because people aren't spending.
So money worth even less already, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose. Well, the thing is, what they do is they buy government bonds, which are basically the government. They give money to the government.
Didn't know they kept a ton of clones of James Bond.
Oh, they give money to the government, and the government spend it, invest it in keeping the country going. But they owe it to the bank, which is weird because you sort of think, well, yeah, but they owe it
to the bank that they kind of own. Or does the Queen own it?
So I was a bank.
The Queen owns the government, but also the bank.
But if they are able to invent money, basically they can go, here, have this £5 million we've just invented. By the way, you owe us £5 million.
Well, yeah, because they're loaning it to it.
Yeah, but it's like, so who is the Bank of England? I mean, obviously they have directors, they have people who run it, they have a boss, if you like, but who is actually responsible for? I mean, do they, like you just said, do they work? Does the Queen own it? I mean, she's on the banknotes, isn't she?
Well, I think the Queen owns a bunch of institutions in the country, but doesn't really have any actual power within them.
We used to know before I lived in Headingley, where the Yorkshire Ripper killed people, or killed someone, one of his victims. We lived in a place called Horbury, which is in Wakefield, South Yorkshire. I think it's South Yorkshire, it might be West Yorkshire. No, it's West Yorkshire. I'm sorry. That's Sheffield, that's South Yorkshire. Oh, no. What's my point?
I don't know.
Yes, a friend of ours, their husband worked as a lorry driver, and he used to drive the lorry which took used banknotes from the Bank of England, or from the banks.
What's a used banknote? Well,
I mean, it's not so much of a problem now, although it will still be a thing, is that banknotes used to be, like pound notes, £5 notes, £10 notes.
Oh, did you used to have pound notes?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
They...
You have £2 notes?
Would wear out. No, it was £1, £5, £10, £20.
Do you have £2 coins as well?
Well, no, they came along after. £1 coins came along first, and they were used in conjunction with £1 notes for quite a while. In fact, £1 notes were still around in your lifetime.
Oh, were they?
Yeah. I'm not sure when £2 coins came in. Probably before you were born, I think. But it's an interesting fact. £50 notes is the highest denomination in England, but you can have £100 notes in Scotland. Because I was surprised first time I saw one. I thought, what the hell's that? Anyway, they wear out over time. So eventually they have to be... It's all kind of accounted for, but they have to be taken to an incinerator to be burnt, because obviously you don't want notes that have been taken out of circulation. There'll be a system whereby, there'll be a thousand notes are taken out and 1,000 new ones are put in to replace it.
Before they were made like plastic, if they get ripped, damaged,
but they just wear out,
Well, yeah, they just sort of degrade over.
I mean, the plastic they'll still be a bit take longer to do it now. But basically, this guy used to drive the lorry with the used notes from the bank to the incinerator.
Right.
So it's like, I don't know what systems there were in place, whether they had to weigh the lorry or what, but, he could easily have just, stopped somewhere along the way and just grabbed a handful of notes from the back of the lorry. That's what we used to think. We don't think he did, though.
I imagine with, transport of money like that, they heavily monitor when you stop, because if you stopped at all, that would be suspicious if people were stealing anything.
Pardon me? Well, yeah, but you got to remember this was the 1970s. They didn't have CCTV. They didn't have tracking. They didn't have...
Well, they could track movement, presumably, in a black box or something.
No.
Well, not they could track it and know where it was at all times, but they could record when it was moving and when it wasn't.
I don't know how long tachographs have been around. Yeah, there'll have been some kind of
No, like
tachometer thing, but
traffic lights. But
yeah, but I mean, like, how do you, like, say if you stop at a traffic lights, how do you determine on a tachograph? How do you determine whether someone was stopped at traffic lights or in a lay-by?
what?
Well, say your vehicle stops. The tachograph is a thing which says when your vehicle's moving or what speed it's moving at, which is like the lorry thing for sort of monitoring time and stuff.
I think the point is that like they're not allowed to stop.
Yeah, but you have to stop for things like traffic lights, and
Well, yeah, but
you might have to stop for the toilet or...
well, the point is that like you're not allowed to do things like that, like go to the toilet, because if you stop, that would be suspicious. Either that, or they'll have like a second person to verify at all times.
Yeah, but I don't know how we got onto that subject, because I was just...
Money.
Yeah. We should stop soon.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm making less and less sense.
Tapering off.
I wanted to go meow, but I don't know why.
I don't know what noise tapirs make.
Oh, tapirs. So, yeah, hopefully I won't rip my stitches. Tapir mammal. Tapir noise. What tapir love sounds like. Why are we listening to tapirs having sex?
Because we're sick, I don't know.
Love at the zoo.
Monkeys react to magic.
Let's stop before we get lost in a YouTube...
Spiral.
What was it? Not quarantine, not mosaic.
Spiral.
No. Labyrinth. Maze.
Spiral.
Spirogyra.
That sounds like a medical condition for your vagina.
You should know what a spirogyra is.
What is a spirogyra?
You don't know what a spirogyra is? You call yourself a biologist.
They probably changed the name of it.
I don't believe that for a second. I know I think it's a progressive rock band, but a spirogyra is algae. A filamentous charophyte green alga of the order Zygomatales, named for the helical or spiral arrangement of the chloroplasts that's characteristic of the genus. Did you not know that?
Carify. No, I mean we did cover algae a bit, but
There are more than 400 species of spirogyra in the world, and you've never heard of them.
There's like 8.7 million species of eukaryotes, so I don't know.
What's
all
a
of them.
eukaryote? Let's stop the podcast.
Kind of the
please.
things that have nuclei like our cells do.
Nuclear arseholes.
Nuclei. But then there's also archaea that are kind of confusing. But yeah, we didn't look at algae that much.
Do you like Into the Woods, the musical?
Yeah, sort of. I don't like James Corden, but
Why is it people have got against him?
he's just an annoying twat. He should stay in America.
Is he even American?
No, he does TV shows in America because they seem to like him because he's a chirpy fucking dickhead.
I don't know what people have got against him. I like him. I think
Because
he's
he's just annoying.
Okay, fair enough. How do we finish? Because I need a wee. We've nearly finished our second beer. We've got comedy to watch, and I'm getting phoned by Optical Express in the morning.
Seinfeld.
What about Seinfeld?
It's just overly American, but he's somehow British, and I don't get it.
So, what do you think of Seinfeld?
Annoying and kind of just...
Sorry, take that, Nick.
It's just kind of like... I don't know, it might be that just like comedy's moved on now, so like... All that, like, what's the deal with airline food is
I'm
kind
a bit
of just
worried.
old hat, and it's been overplayed.
I'm a bit worried
What?
because I'm getting more reliant on alcohol to fuel the podcast?
Okay. What do you mean?
Well, I just feel like this one's not been very good, but I'll probably listen back to it and it'll be all right. Hello, me. I'm just saying hello to the me that listens because I listened to our last podcast.
Oh. You know, it's good to have some quality control because you don't listen to them when you're editing them.
I don't edit them.
Exactly.
It's called top and tailing.
Oh, do you literally not even listen through it?
No. I don't have time.
Well, fine, whatever. Never mind. Anyway.
Well, apart from talking about the channel itself, I do all the kind of post-production and stuff, but not the editing bit. I know you do the editing, but you forget I do, like, the vast majority of stuff. I cook most of the meals that get cooked in the house. I do a lot of the washing up. I do all of the laundry.
Okay.
I go out to work.
It's extinct. No wonder I don't know what it is.
Spyrogyra is extinct?
Yes.
I'm sure it wasn't when I was at school. When did it become extinct?
Can look it up.
What are you doing?
Oh,
I'm sure this is not very good content.
well, if you fucking edited it, then it might be.
Can we...
Shut up.
It's not extinct. It says it's very common in relatively clear eutrophic
Well, it
water.
said it was extinct here.
Where?
Here.
Extinction status. Extinct.
Encyclopedia.
Okay. And... Sexual reproduction is of two types. Do you think they have... stop scrolling through lists of Spyrogyras. End the podcast. I rely on you to end the podcast. You won't let me end it.
No.
And
well, some algae have like 8 sexes, so that's probably why they have multiple forms of reproduction.
do you think all 8 of them are needed to reproduce?
Probably not.
Like an octopus of sex.
You only really need the female to reproduce. Like clonally, it's just like the male's there for genetic diversity.
Ah.
Woo, 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 woo.
Decorative purposes.
Well, kind of just to like stop you getting diseases that just wipe out your entire species because you're identical.
We're just like a backup plan.
Well, to mix things up a bit, you know.
We stir the pot. Literally. With
But
our
there's whole
penises.
in the selfish gene, if you're interested, there's a whole like chapter on the battle of the sexes. It's not actually between like the battle of the sexes between humans because that's bullshit, but like value of putting energy into reproduction.
We should,
anyway,
let's stop. Let's stop because I want to stop.
Okay. Anyway, I've been Firebolt.
I've been the Orbiter. Hi ho.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I think we've finished, haven't we? And this has been...
You're just kind of being very low energy and annoying. And this has been Breaking Bollocks, episode 72. Work. Bye, I guess.
What was that?
It was alright until you decided just that you didn't want to exist anymore.
When did that happen? What do you mean? What, they just like the end bit?
10 minutes ago.
Alright, so we did okay then.
For most of it, yeah, but you just get to a point where you're just like, nope, I'm just not contributing anymore.
Well,
my
yeah,
brain's
it's like,
gone.
Yeah, because we're over 2.25 hours into it now, so I suppose that maybe 2 hours is my limit. What? We're the longest podcast on the network. This is why we don't get any listeners, because it's a fucking half-day job listening to our podcast.
Well, if you actually fucking edited them, then it might not be.
Yeah, but see, editing even when I did do that back at the beginning, it used to take me so fucking long because basically it was just a case of cutting out minute silences in between sentences because everything we say has value.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, but I have no way of judging.
Yeah, this is
which is which.
Like,
I just cut out the gaps in between the sentences.
Like with films, like you don't make the sort of judgments that most people make because you just sort of think, oh, well, it's all kind of okay. I just want to enjoy myself. Let's just have fun.
Is that not the point of life?
Well, it's not really critically thinking, is it?
I don't need to. I'm not being paid.
You don't need to critically think.
No,
okay.
I'm not being paid. I'm not being paid to be a critic.
You're not being paid to do fuck all, really, are you?
Yeah.
You being paid to deliver pizzas?
Yeah. I'm also basically getting paid to study to be a teacher.
I guess, yeah. Well, you kind of...
And I get paid to perform when
that money's kind of to make sure that you can continue to do that, not that
but like when coronavirus isn't in charge, I get paid to tickle the ivories and blow my horn. Trumpet thing.
Okay.
Hang on. Where did this come from? Where did this idea, this part of the conversation, where did it sprout from? You were just shouting at me for some reason. What was that?
You don't critically think.
But that's work.
You were like, oh, yeah, I don't get paid to do it, so
well, yeah,
fuck
why
you.
would I expend mental energy on sifting, on assigning value to something when I could just sit back and enjoy it if I'm not working?
Because you're a dumb cunt.
I'm sure that's an insult to no end of different species of ideal thing. Words. Oh, fuck. I can't work anymore.
No, you can't.
You broke my brain.
What idea are you trying to formulate in your little monkey brain?
Well, just don't call me names like that. It's not very nice.
Oh, no. I'm dying.
I need a wee.
Do you want to stop the recording so that you don't have to keep this in?
You know this is staying in though, don't you?
Oh, yeah, but so that we don't have to keep another fucking 20 minutes of conversation in.
I have to say something original before I stop it. Like, I'm sure plenty of times I've gone, how do I stop this? And ended up going, oh yeah, like this. And then that's the end of the recording. But I've got to shake things up a bit and make things a little bit more varied.
This podcast is part of the After Dark Podcast Network.